Bryce James has lived in the shadow of his famous family, touted as the true gem of the James dynasty. On top of this, several scouts even claimed he might even surpass Bronny, fueling the hype. But his inconsistent production at Sierra Canyon tells a different story. Despite occasional flashes of skill, his rankings seem propped up by his last name rather than his performance. But has Bryce truly improved, or has he officially gotten worse? Bryce James spent his early years as the quieter of LeBron's two sons. While Bronny captured national attention in elementary school, Bryce often practiced in relative anonymity. This changed in middle school when footage of him knocking down jump shots at youth tournaments started circulating online. Scouts began praising his size, natural shooting form, and potential to grow into something special. Speculation soared once it was rumored Bryce might match or even exceed his father's height. People imagined he could become a taller, perhaps more offensively polished version of Bronny. Observers pointed to certain traits: soft shooting touch, decent footwork, and a knack for finding open space on the floor. Yet those glimpses didn't immediately translate to top-tier performances once he hit high school. Instead, fans saw an athlete still working out basic kinks in his game. Some watchers worried that the hype had come too soon. Bryce occasionally looked hesitant on the court, reluctant to stand out on a stacked roster. Despite the early talk of him being the true gem of the James family, reality set in quickly. Sierra Canyon, a program loaded with 5-star recruits, didn't revolve around him. His minutes and scoring stayed moderate, contradicting the grand predictions from middle school. Analysts wondered if the earlier excitement was just hype. They also pointed out that Bryce, at his age, had time to blossom, but needed real game reps to tap that potential. At first glance, fans might label him a disappointment, but that might be an overreaction. He's still a teenager figuring out a complex situation. The bigger issue, some argue, is the false narrative around him. People pegged him as the next in line to carry the James legacy, though he hasn't shown evidence of that yet. Sierra Canyon High School ranks among the elite basketball pipelines in the country. Each year, top players join the team, hungry for national exposure. The program also hosts marquee events, drawing ESPN coverage and big crowds. It's a perfect setting for a talented prospect to shine, unless you fail to crack the rotation. Bryce James found himself buried in a roster filled with advanced athletes. Coaches often favor upperclassmen or proven talents. Young players can lose confidence if they only see the floor in blowouts or garbage time. In Bryce's case, the hype around his name clashed with the reality of so many options for the coaching staff. At times, he struggled to assert himself when he did get playing time. He seemed unsure about whether to create his shot, dish the ball, or just stick to the system. Being overshadowed by higher-ranked teammates carries drawbacks. Some suggest Bryce might have benefited from a smaller, less famous program where he'd get consistent minutes and a bigger leadership role. That setting might have allowed him to explore his strengths, learn from mistakes, and refine his style without the pressure of a star-stacked environment. Gilbert Arenas, among others, has argued that high school should be about player growth, not just chasing titles at powerhouse schools. The idea is that you won't impress college coaches by sitting on the bench, even if your school racks up wins. They want to see a film of you handling double teams, managing late game situations, or locking down an opposing star. Scoring 40 points per game might be unrealistic, but showing real progress each season is vital. Comparisons to Bronny only sharpen the focus on Bryce's struggles. Bronny carved out a role at Sierra Canyon more quickly, demonstrating active defense and a willingness to attack the rim. Bryce, in contrast, often fades into the background, launching occasional jumpers but rarely commanding the ball. Even if he has an impressive shooting stroke, he can't prove it unless he lets it fly under pressure. Though Bryce holds 4-star rankings in certain scouting circles, some watchers feel those accolades reflect his lineage more than his present ability. The mismatch between his ranking and limited impact at Sierra Canyon raises questions. Is he truly a top prospect, or is he just riding on the James name? If he can't shine during high school's crucial development years, how will he transition to college or any higher level competition? Bryce James's recruitment tale is scattered across multiple platforms, each giving different verdicts. On one site, you might see him labeled as a 4-star prospect with a bright future. Switch channels and another ranking places him well outside the top 200 in his class. These wild variations expose the confusing intersection of hype and reality. Some scouts highlight Bryce's sweet shooting stroke and call him a promising wing shooter. They note how he can spot up from deep or pull up in transition, but others see a middling contributor who doesn't consistently deliver when defenses tighten. What's the source of these conflicting assessments? It might stem from the limited sample of truly competitive games. Bryce's performances often take place in high-profile events where he appears timid, or in less intense matchups where his skill set looks good but not mind-blowing. Another factor is the James name, which can inflate any minor success into a big storyline. If Bryce has a decent outing, clips might go viral, creating the impression of a star in the making. That impression can influence certain ranking services, pushing them to place him higher than his stats or on-court impact would suggest. Meanwhile, more neutral evaluators might rank him lower after observing unimpressive AAU tournaments or missed shots in critical situations. It's not unusual for young players to see their rankings fluctuate, but Bryce's case feels extreme. The Nike Peach Jam fiasco is a prime example. He struggled mightily, yet soon saw a ranking boost on some platforms. Critics wondered if anything beyond familial ties could explain that upward move. Consistency is key in scouting, and Bryce hasn't shown stable performances across major AAU circuits. This uneven scouting environment is tricky for both fans and recruiters. People wonder if the hype machine sets him up for failure. If a 4-star label turns out to be undeserved, the backlash will be harsh. On the flip side, if he truly is a late bloomer, these harsh judgments could stifle his confidence or overshadow his eventual progress. Either way, the message is clear. Bryce's rankings remain a work in progress. His name alone won't cut it. Real production must back it up if he aims to secure a top spot in the class and beyond. One of the biggest debates around Bryce James centers on his true position. Is he a guard who needs to handle the rock, or a wing who should space the floor and score off cuts? Early reports hinted he might top out near 6'6", giving him a wing's frame, but some still list him around 6'4", suggesting he's a guard. That 2-inch gap may sound minimal, but it changes a lot. A 6'4" guard typically needs top-tier handles, solid playmaking, and an ability to shoot on the move. He must also defend quick ball handlers. Meanwhile, a 6'6" wing can thrive as a floor spacer, focusing on catch-and-shoot chances, driving closeouts, and mixing in post-ups if strong enough. Athletes in that size range can pick their spots, given they have length to contest on defense or snag rebounds. For now, Bryce's most reliable asset is his jumper. Observers praise his form. He keeps the ball high, extends well, and releases smoothly. When he's open, he can drain shots at a steady clip. The problem arises when defenders close in or push him out of his comfort zone. At times, Bryce seems reluctant to drive. His handle appears decent, but not yet dynamic enough to break down top defenders. He also doesn't show the explosive finishing at the rim that players like Bronny displayed in high school. On defense, Bryce tries to use angles and read passing lanes. He's decent in a team defense framework, but lacks the physicality to stifle quicker wings or stronger guards. Opposing players sometimes blow by him or bully him if he can't hold his ground. In fairness, many teens face strength deficits that improve with time. But while Bronny showed more athletic promise at the same stage, Bryce projects less explosiveness. Another concern is consistency. Even if he's a skilled shooter, does that skill show up in major tournaments or tight games against elite opponents? If the shot isn't falling, does he have other ways to contribute? So far, the answers are hazy. Some nights he looks polished and confident, hitting threes and dropping in floaters. Other nights he vanishes, taking only a handful of attempts and deferring to teammates. He also seems unsure about whether to create for others. If Bryce wants to develop guard-like responsibilities, he must improve his vision and willingness to set up teammates. Right now, watchers see flashes but not enough repetition to trust him as a primary ball handler. If he's destined to be a spot-up or secondary creator, he needs a well-rounded approach to fill that role. That means he must become a threat off the bounce and learn to move without the ball, using screens effectively. As soon as Bryce James showed up on the basketball scene, the media machine fired up. He's not just another high school player trying to earn a scholarship. He's LeBron's kid, the second in a line of heirs to a hoops dynasty. This status means analysts lean in on every detail, from his shot mechanics to how he walks onto the court. It's a level of scrutiny most teens never face. Some voices proclaimed Bryce had more potential than Bronny. They cited his slightly taller stature and glimpses of an advanced shooting touch. They also pointed to the possibility that Bryce would stay in the shadows longer, meaning he could develop away from Bronny's extreme spotlight. Over time, that narrative took on a life of its own. Fans envisioned Bryce as the secret weapon, about to make a leap that Bronny never did. However, with each passing season, Bryce's actual output didn't align with the hype. The same outlets that once portrayed him as the future star began doubting whether his skill set would materialize in time. People started to question if the James name inflated his scouting reports. It's one thing to dream about surpassing a sibling, it's another to show it on the court, especially at a high-pressure school like Sierra Canyon. Social media often magnifies these highs and lows. A single clip of Bryce hitting a deep three or throwing a slick pass can make the rounds, reinforcing the notion he's a budding phenom. However, a poor performance at a major AAU event might also go viral, leading critics to flood comment sections with overrated labels. This seesaw between hype and skepticism can be mentally draining for any teenager. The emotional weight is massive. If Bryce struggles, people blame him for not living up to his lineage. If he does well, cynics might say the competition was weak or the footage deceptive. Meanwhile, he's expected to handle interviews, social media chatter, and fan speculation about potential colleges or pro avenues. The burden can distract him from focusing on skill building. Each misstep feels amplified, as if every game is an audition for an NBA career he hasn't even decided on yet. Bronny, by comparison, faced the brunt of media obsession earlier. He fought through that stage and carved out a style emphasizing defense, distribution, and timely scoring. Bryce hasn't yet hit that stride. He's also overshadowed by his father's final chapters in the NBA and Bronny's transition to college.
When we get to the NBA, I want to be on the same. I want to be on the court with him. I think that'll be an unbelievable moment.
Who do you want to play with?
Bronny is number one on my fucking list.
Critics wonder whether the younger James can detach from the swirling narratives and adopt a pure approach to the game, practicing daily, experimenting with roles, and ignoring the hype until his skill catches up. Long-term, wearing the James jersey cuts both ways. Sponsorship opportunities and brand deals might come more easily, but every slip is magnified. People question if he's worse, not just by typical teenage standards, but by the lofty yardstick set by a family of basketball icons. The outcome depends on how Bryce handles it. He might let the weight of expectations crush him, or he might transform it into motivation to refine his shot, bolster his defense, and prove he's more than a famous last name. College programs have taken note of Bryce, and multiple schools might want him, even if only to capitalize on his name recognition. Yet, picking a college that fosters genuine growth is crucial. If he goes to a high-profile university with a crowded backcourt, he might repeat Sierra Canyon's problems. If he picks a spot where coaches let him develop gradually, we might finally see his potential flourish. The priority must be adding strength, confidence, and efficiency. If Bryce can lock in on physical conditioning and fully commit to training, he could become a respectable shooter and a versatile wing. He has shown glimpses of basketball IQ, especially as a team defender. With time, that awareness might blossom into something special if he pairs it with better lateral quickness or interior toughness. He'll also need an honest self-assessment. Is he a combo guard with secondary playmaking duties, or a wing who punishes teams from deep and occasionally creates for himself? That clarity will help him sharpen the right tools. Once he stops trying to be everything at once, he can define a path and excel in it. Bryce may not follow the typical one-and-done path some predicted. He might need multiple college seasons or an alternative route, like the G League, to find his stride. Being a late bloomer isn't a death sentence. Some NBA players emerged after modest high school careers, but it demands patience and grit. If he leans on James's legacy without addressing his flaws, he may never reach the professional ranks. If he embraces a long grind, ignoring the hype, the door remains open for a solid career. Bryce James has flashes of promise, yet his progress hasn't matched the early hype. The glimmers of skill, a smooth jumper, a decent feel on defense, only matter if he refines them through real game experience. He's in a tough spot, overshadowed by Bronny's spotlight and LeBron's towering legacy. But that doesn't mean his story ends here. With the right support, honest self-reflection, and a willingness to work, he could turn doubts into a genuine rise. For now though, the claims that he's the next James superstar seem premature. Only time will reveal the truth. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to watch our next one shown on screen.